Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I hope to be joined by my Thursday comrade, JP Mason. Regardless, we are going to be talking all things Celtic for the next 1 hour. What a season we have had. And until the aforementioned JP Mason arrives, it means that you and I will be able to run through some of the big talking points. What's the tagline of today's show? Don't believe the hype. Celtic should be doing so much better. What do I mean by that? Well, it's really on the back of what the club wants you to believe, bleeding into Martin O'Neill's press conferences, and we're going to be digging into that. So let's hear your thoughts. What do you make of Martin O'Neill's comments around European adventures, progress, journeys? This is a man. Only 2 Celtic managers have taken us to a final in Europe. He's one of them. Although JP hasn't done that, he's the other man on the screen. Hey, JP Mason, welcome to the show. You're as busy as always, it would seem.
Sorry about that. I'm not in Cape Verde.
Unlike young Patrick, yes. He gets around. He's a bit like Deck. I think Deck is his inspiration. Patrick gets around. We'll start off with that jersey hanging up behind you. I think I know what the connection is. We were talking about Immobile yesterday. I didn't realise until yesterday he's in Bologna's squad, JP.
I didn't realise that until I heard you say that as well. Yeah, you kind of had that horrible feeling when you saw he was in the Lazio squad in that game that he was going to probably score a goal against us, but we do still have the memory of that particular game over my shoulder, which unfortunately I wasn't at. Will definitely go down in the history books as one of those I was there moments, and I wasn't there, but I know plenty of people who were and said that it was biblical, to say the least. Especially when Neil Lennon went over to the away support to celebrate at the end. I have experienced Lazio away. It was a defeat, but it was still a pretty cool experience to see Celtic play in that stadium. And I would have dearly liked to have been in Bologna tonight and revisit a city that I was in 18 years ago, which is terrifying to say out loud. But yeah, I happened to be there on tour with Frightened Rabbit in 2008. And the promoter took us to a really nice restaurant in Bologna, which was like a proper old school Italian restaurant, low ceiling. As you walk in the door, on the left-hand side, there's a giant picture of like a Don, like an old guy, really old guy with a cigarette and a cup of coffee. And it was a really well-taken picture. And on the other side of the foyer was like all his family, like that he's, his sons, his daughters, their sons and daughters, like a collage. And it was almost like he was kind of watching over them. Pretty cool thing to see, and some of the best food I've ever had. So anybody that's in Bologna, don't go to McDonald's, go to a nice restaurant.
I love your memory. Absolutely love it, JP. And memories of Lazio, I always, and I make no apology for mentioning this, I always mention the night Kevin Graham and I watched Celtic versus Lazio alongside Andrew Innes of Primal Scream fame. And that's always going to be my undying memory, celebrating with Andrew Innes. Absolutely loved that night. Hopefully we'll have another one tonight. I think yesterday, the comments made yesterday by Martin O'Neill, JP, just as you were coming in there, has inspired me to write the following tagline: don't believe the hype. Celtic should be doing so much better. And we touched on this yesterday in relation to Celtic and Europe. Celtic, where we are right now, it's one of the things at the beginning of the season. You have aspirations, you have ambitions for the season ahead. But Celtic have torn all that down, actually. And Europe now, some people are saying in the comments, is a distraction. And other people are saying, it's one of these things that it's no longer a priority. I don't buy into that 100%, JP, because I believe in momentum. It's the same team that played the weekend past that, that's going to go into a game against Hearts. And I think we need to have that winning momentum. And it's so, so important to have that behind you. What's your take going into the European game tonight?
Absolutely agree. And I think if I think back to... maybe it was the Sturm Graz game we spoke on that day ahead of that game. And I kind of referred to, I think it was Lawrence, who'd sort of said, bin Europe for me. You know, there's no point. We should focus on the title race. And then we went out that night and won convincingly. I think that was ahead of the Hearts game, if I remember rightly. Am I wrong in thinking that? Or
no, because it kind of breathed a wee bit of life into Brendan Rodgers' side that night, if you remember. And then obviously we went on to, get back-to-back defeats, Dundee and Hearts, wasn't it? So no, it was in and amongst the latter days of Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, and I think we did the same against Feyenoord.
Might have been his last game at Celtic Park, actually.
No, you're right. It was. Aye, well, signed off with a victory. And then the Feyenoord game, there's a couple of people in the mentions here who joined us at the Barras Art and Design fan zone for Feyenoord. I walked into that, JP, not with a great deal of hope, thinking to myself, it's a bridge too far, even for Martin O'Neill, who had breathed new life into the Celtic title challenge, got us to League Cup final. I thought to myself, Europe is a bridge too far. But the disappointment about that is we shouldn't be thinking like this. I think we're realists sitting here as Celtic supporters. But yesterday, I felt the energy around Martin O'Neill was very much like the Celtic culture within the club. This lack of belief that we, as a football club, could and should do better. Now, here's an example, right? Martin O'Neill comes back in for the second time this season. And at that moment, on the 5th of January, JP, the entire scouting and recruitment department had been working for the previous 365 days, identifying players, because that is their role. That's their sole purpose at the football club. The entire department doesn't shut and then open during windows. 365, they're on players constantly. I should be able to, if I'm the manager of the football club, I should be able to walk along the corridor and say to someone in that room, right, you know what, couple of injuries, give me a list of left backs. And they've already done the work. They've identified players, JP, they've done the scouting, they've got all the data reports, and then they can say, here we go. And then obviously at that point, the manager can have more of a look at the players and scrutinise the list, right? So he's walked in on the 5th of January. And what I would expect from this football club, our football club, is something that is functional in that regard. I mean, we're in a transfer window, right? But what he's actually walked into, and I know people on the socials after John mentioned a few words about our apparent new signing, which we'll come back to. A lot of people say, that's just your opinion. But on the back of opinion, JP, is speaking to people involved in this and actually getting certain things confirmed. So Martin O'Neill has gone into Celtic. The entire scouting and recruitment department's been torn up. The head of that department's away, right? And there's nothing. There is nothing of quality sitting on his desk. They've had to start from scratch here. Our new signing, who we'll be talking about, is a player who was identified not by an agent approaching Celtic and Rangers, and I'll come back to that as well. It was identified by Mark Fotheringham, Fozzie. He identified this player, right? And you're thinking to yourself, JP...
I did suspect it might be something along those lines, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's absurd that a club of this size, right, with this fan base, is relying on somebody just in the door to identify a striker. We did not have the work done on the 5th of January to identify a striker. And I guess that's why the rumours around Kyogo and all this kind of thing happened, because it's lazy journalism, but it's also lazy recruitment. So there might be a bit of truth in both. So this will lead us on to the striker. If you're a club like Celtic, you should never be behaving at that amateur level. So don't come out and say we can't compete in Europe. You can. You just need to be far better at your job. Someone there, a number of people, an entire department aren't doing their jobs, JP. It's a 365-day job to scout and recruit players. And they've walked in on the 5th of January and we don't have the requisite quality available in terms of data, scouting reports, to present to the new manager. It's a disgrace.
It absolutely is. And it should put pay to the level of, how can I put this, appendage swinging that goes on from the upper echelons of Celtic Football Club, that we do all this right, get back in your box, you know nothing, gaze your money. Like, basically that's the rhetoric that has been
No.
Right. So the chances are that he's got good contacts in German football who he could pick up the phone to and say, give me a short list of strikers that are of a gettable, achievable signing for Celtic, and maybe point me to somebody that's maybe in a position like Chvanchara, who has lost his way at that club after a big money move. And you can file that sort of story next to many others in our past, whereby we've picked up somebody who is looking for an opportunity to kickstart their career off the back of having a proven track record in scoring at a previous club, i.e. Chris Sutton. Look at Kyogo. Would nobody touch Kyogo because of his past year in football? You only need to look at what he did before that. Maybe his age bracket is different to Chvanchara because he's 5 years younger than him, but it would, with you saying that Mark Fotheringham was the major sort of driver in this deal, would suggest to me that he's got reliable contacts in German football who he can pick up the phone to and say, right, I need a short list so that we're in an absolute mess here where we need to get a striker in, and I need to look at a short list of targets that I can cross off till I get to the one that I think we can target. And that's more than likely what's happened here. And I don't normally watch videos of players, the usual kind of 5-minute YouTube reel of goals backed by nondescript sort of European dance music that I've got no knowledge of. Sounds like Eurovision or something like that. They usually, because they obviously can't use an actual song because of copyright, so they just find some sort of
non-royalty tune,
non-royalty music. And I liked what I saw of the guy. I mean, the majority of what you saw was from his time in his homeland with Sparta Prague, but also strange to find out. And I found this out courtesy of Celtic AM. Hamish said that he's played against us at Celtic Park. Did you know that?
For Jablonek?
Yeah. Didn't know that. Wouldn't have ever joined the dots on that.
Might watch the games back, actually.
to see how many touches he got.
It's one of the ones where I don't even know if they're still on the Celtic TV archive. The full game. Go and watch it back. I remember the away tie. I'm pretty sure we wore that white kit with a pink and green pinstripe through it, and I think, although I need to check this, I think Edouard came off as a sub for Kyogo. There's a moment, it's an interesting one where Edouard and Kyogo, it's almost like passing the baton. Yeah, I'm sure that was Jablonek. No, I would like to watch that back just to see his involvement, the type of player he was. And I know it was 5 seasons ago, JP, but it would be interesting to watch him in action. I mean,
he hasn't disgraced himself in 5 years. I mean, I've heard the chat of the unrest at Gladbach over the fact that he was being played at right wing. I mean, you only need to listen to Sebastian Tenecte and his presser yesterday to hear of someone who was played in the wrong position under our previous manager, and his difficulty in being able to sort of say, well, I'm not a wing back, I'm a left winger. And therefore, if you play me at left wing back, chances are you're not going to get the best out of me, which would apply to perhaps maybe Anthony Ralston at right centre back, who's not a centre back, and then go around the rest of the team of players that were played out of position, etc. So I can understand his frustration at not being able to. If I'm playing, I'd rather play. When I played at a very, very low level for Paul Beth way back in the late 90s, I played right wing. Occasionally right back, but I never played left wing or centre back because I didn't know how to play that. position.
You feel like honestly,
I didn't come through the Ajax Youth Academy, right?
But you do feel like a fish out of water. Even professionals feel like that, JP, if they're playing out of position. Now, that's not to be confused by a situation where a certain manager finds a better position for you, because Mark O'Neill has done that in the past. He's done that with Johan Mialbe, Jackie McNamara, Didier Gap. These guys were better and far more influential in a new position, but that wasn't because they were just chucked in there. Martin's obviously seen things in training and the attributes of each individual to think, I can push you in here. And it's been done in the right way, and it's been done in a winning team. To just throw up the guys' names and then for them to land on a tactics board and say, right, you're playing here, there and everywhere, it's no good for the players' confidence either. Because, for example, if you put someone who is pretty much right-sided into the centre, JP, the whole landscape of the park's different when he gets the ball. I've never seen Ralston playing as badly as he did under Nancy. And I'll never forget on one occasion where he tried a slide tackle with his head. I'll need to look back on that. The guy was all over the place. And I think it's probably affected him since. And it's going to take him a while, and others, to get some confidence back, because they were so bad being played out of position. It doesn't make sense to me. But in relation to this, someone's just said Celtic have announced the signing, and I'm checking that whilst I'm speaking to you, just to see if the football club have. If not, we're going to be talking about the supposed new signing in any case. And in relation to that particular signing, you'll notice that on the morning of the interest, and then there's the picture of him with his agent on a flight coming over. It was reported that Rangers were interested in him. I think people are at the high jinks with that, JP, because doing a bit of digging and finding out that we've actually identified the player would suggest that it's not one of these old ones where an agent is punting a player around Europe. He comes to Scotland and he offers them to Celtic and Rangers, and that does happen. That happens to a lot of players, and that's how we got Palmer. Palmer was offered to both clubs. Celtic maybe offered them a wee bit more, and we got the player. And it's happened to a lot of clubs in the past. But I almost feel, we have just had confirmed that 10 minutes ago. Celtic Football Club are delighted to confirm that Tomas Svanchara has joined Celtic on loan, subject to international clearance, and the big man is photographed in the home jersey. So that's good. I mean, in terms of the fact that I think we needed at least 4 players in the door, JP. I said 4 or 5 because I expected maybe one to leave. We've got 2 in. Yes, both of them are loans. That doesn't mention with an option to buy, but supposedly there is an option to buy for £7 million, depending on how he does. His career has gone off-piste. He had obviously done so well to get the move to Borussia Mönchengladbach. It's not worked out, and we're left to kind of pick up the pieces. But I was mentioning yesterday, O'Neill's good at that. JP's very good at that, and we're in a position where that's the type of quality that we're able to get. And that, as I said before, if you think of the flat line and a trajectory going like that, up and then down, we get them on the 2 points. On the way up before a big club comes in and takes them. On the way down. And it's not to say that they can go back up after we've brought them in. And that's where we're getting him. We're getting him on the way down at the moment. And hopefully we can build him back up.
Absolutely. And another thing that Hamish pointed out on his podcast was that the coaching staff have not been able, would not possibly have been able to watch this guy in the flesh. This guy hasn't been scouted. Even if we had a stable recruitment operation in action, he's not played. He's played 45 minutes earlier this month in a mid-season friendly for Gladbach against. I can't remember who he played against. I've not got that good a memory, but prior to that, he hadn't played since early December in Turkey, and then there was all the shenanigans with his payment in Turkey and being due a 6-figure sum for his wages, and then going to some sort of tribunal to terminate his loan deal. So he's obviously not had a good time. Not a very good advert for Turkish football. I'm pretty sure he'll not be recommending that to many players that he comes into contact with.
That was an issue in previous years, wasn't it? About players going over there and not getting wages. I don't know if there's a habit or a culture of that in Turkish football. That's happened to a lot of players going over even from Scotland. I'm having a wee look at his action this season. He's played 706 minutes not a great deal. And yeah, he's only scored a couple of goals and got 1 assist. So he's not had a great run of form, but it's been unsettled, and we know where we are in terms of what we need. Once he comes in, though, JP, what else do we need in your view?
Well, just going back to the lack of playing time, you look at Araujo. He hadn't played since August, and then comes on as a substitute in the Rangers game, and then starts, I think, the next game, doesn't he? He didn't start in a game against Dundee United.
He started against Falkirk, and then was rested against Auchinleck Talbot.
Yeah, so of course you would rather someone had been playing week in, week out, but we're in the position where we're probably not able to. Like, this is the type of deal that we are going after. The other thing I would say about Martin O'Neill and Mark Fotheringham, I can imagine a sort of war room with Martin O'Neill, Mark Fotheringham, Sean Maloney, with that guy Shanchara on the big screen, and them having like a Zoom conversation with him, just sort of saying, right, talk us through your ambitions, like tell us a bit about yourself, rather than just it being a case of like click, buy, and then the guy arrives. I think Martin O'Neill would almost insist that there's some sort of conversation to be had with the player, whether it's in that scenario. I know that sounds a bit of a far-fetched scenario, a war room or whatever, but whether it's a phone call or whatever, much like the phone call to Matty Elliott that yielded the Zinedine Zidane comment that I was talking about last week. I wouldn't think Martin O'Neill would just sort of go, okay, let's get him, and not have a personalised conversation with him. Like, he's had personalised conversations with the players that he's dealing with day to day. You could see that interaction when he was bidding them farewell, and I was holding back the tears in the dressing room after his last game. So it would only make sense that they would attempt to make that kind of engagement with a player before he arrives, to get the buy-in from the player, so that the player knows what the target is, knows the expectancy of the manager and the coaching staff and the support, and knows what he's coming into, and that he's been given a platform here to properly kickstart his career and get it back off the floor. Because right now he's looking at a career in Germany that has obviously got him a big money move, and apparently Gladbach's director of football has been either lost his job or has been heavily criticised for shelling out that level of money, much the same way as a section of our support still criticise Celtic for shelling out 9 million in Adam Ida. But the crucial thing is in that, and I would always point back to the board on that, is that they didn't insert an option to buy with Adam Ida at this exact point in the transfer window. But guess what they've done? They've learned their lesson. Mistakes were made, and they've got an option to buy in for Shanchara, because if he does, really land, hit the ground running and score a goal, Sunday or afterwards or whenever, then we're not going to be in the position where Mönchengladbach would be like, oh, you want him, do you? 10 million, 15 million. But we've got the figure locked in. So yeah, that's a long-winded way to get back to your last question, which was, what do we need now? I would say it's pretty obvious that we're in the market for a centre-back. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, given Martin O'Neill's comments about Stephen Welsh and whether or not he may or may not go back to Motherwell. So a centre-half and a right winger, which again, we seem to be heavily linked with several of them, whether it's Maswanise from Motherwell, whether it's Raksui from Crystal Palace, there's Aspria from, is it Girona? Colombian winger. So those are the sort of positions that are flying around, which are so obvious. We've not replaced Nicholas Kuhn. And I did notice that you were talking about Jamestown Analytics. I think it was on Friday's show last week, and I mentioned that Como used Jamestown Analytics, and they paid us 17 million for Nicholas Kuhn based on his data in last season. And he's not exactly pulling up trees for them, is he? So it just goes to show that the data thing, whilst obviously it is of massive, massive help and use, it doesn't always, it's not bulletproof. It clearly isn't, because that deal right now is looking better for us than it is for them.
Yeah, it's like, the situation of, is it even is it even worth going to war if the computer system tells you that you're not going to win it? It's war games, isn't it? It's a wee bit like that, whereby there is absolutely no definite in regards to how a player's going to settle in. You look at the signing of our new striker for Borussia Mönchengladbach, over £10 million, JP, right? And they're looking at that. They're going to be looking at that striker like we look at Albion Ayeti and saying, how on earth have we managed to be duped and all this kind of stuff? But particular clubs suit particular players, leagues, the environment, the manager.
You'll go to Rennes, 10 million?
Yeah. 100%. At the time, I was looking at him, and I know a big part of that was his age, etc. But I was looking at that money, thinking to myself, there was a time when we could have got a lot more. I felt for Kyogo Furuhashi, and £10 million seemed a wee bit short for me at the time. However, it's all about the environment that you bring them into, and I think you're right about each individual signing that we bring in. There's one thing for sure. We're not just going to have a scattergun approach to this, JP. We're not going to get to the point where, well, it's that or nothing, therefore I'll just grab it. I remember us buying, remember we signed John Guidetti and we signed Skepovic. We ended up, it was almost as if we were so far down the line with a couple of deals, we just got them over the line anyway, even though it made us a bit top heavy in that position. And I don't think we're going to be in that position in this particular window. I said I wanted one or two this week. We've got one in, and hopefully we can get another few in next week. Now, lots of good comments coming through. Avoid defeat tonight, says Baldy Trucker, and that'll do me. It'll do me as well, because looking at that league table in the Europa League, JP, we're sitting on 7 points. I was reading a good report during the week saying that 9 could get you through, but 10 should be your target to try and finish in that middle section. Anything at all out of tonight, I think, would be a massive, massive effort. And a brilliant outcome. I mean, a draw tonight would be fantastic, I think.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it would do wonders for the confidence of the team as well to go away in Europe like they did in Rotterdam and get that result. I mean, you can see that really did kind of filter through the squad, and there just needs to be good news stories all throughout the team. And I was at the game on Sunday, and whilst it was a fairly grim watch, and people could say, "Oh well, what did you expect?" I mean, I don't really know what I expected, but I maybe expected a bit more entertainment than what I got for my whatever it was. I can't even remember how much the ticket was. So £20, but then you've got your travel. I mean, I left the house at like 2:00, got home at 9:00. It was freezing. But the one thing that I did take away from that was Tenecti's goal and his celebration with Fotheringham. And that was kind of like, I know everyone's going overboard about Fotheringham and his kind of like all these.
He's a bit of a cult figure at the moment, isn't he?
Developing that way. However, It wouldn't really matter to me whether or not there was, AI videos of him, doing a Diet Coke break at Lennoxtown, which is just one of the most surreal things I've ever watched. To see people typing underneath all of the posts like, this has to stop, like, please stop making these and all that. And but more importantly, it showed a connection between the players and the coaching staff, which was notably absent in the short tenure of Wilfred Nancy. And I don't think you can get enough of that. And say somebody was to score a goal, be it Tenecti or otherwise tonight, you just know that there's like there is a bit of a bond there between the coaching staff and the players, and there's a buy-in, and that was my biggest concern throughout the Nancy tenure, and it's been proved that at the other side of it that wasn't there clearly, and there'll be some people that will be like, well, shame on the players for not doing it. And it's like, well, it works both ways. And I'm sorry, but the things that I've been hearing about that whole time doesn't really paint the coaching staff in the best of light.
Yeah.
So I think you cannot underestimate the importance of a European result in any shape or form, especially at this late stage. It's a year ago today that we beat Young Boys in the Champions League.
Of Hugo scored a first half hat trick of disallowed goals.
And the much maligned Adam Ida forced a goal that got us the 3 points that we were struggling to get in that game because of the 3 disallowed Kyogo goals. I heard on another podcast this week that transfer window described as a catastrophe of Trusty Ida and Engels. A catastrophe.
I can't agree with that.
I absolutely can't agree with that either.
That's one of the best windows we've had since Ange.
You sign these players, and then the immediate job is in the next window to augment that. You don't then debilitate the squad by bringing in inferior players to play alongside these guys that you've brought in. And like, see the chat about Arne Engels this week when he was linked with a move away. I was like, no, please God, no. And then when I saw Anthony Joseph break the story that he was happy to stay at Celtic and he wanted to retain the title and was enjoying playing under Martin O'Neill. Anthony Joseph isn't plucking that information out of thin air. He's got a reputation. I would suggest that he's, got some authority to be able to put his name next to that on a Twitter post. So if people were celebrating, and there were some people, quite a lot of people celebrating the idea of us selling Arne Engels. And then my argument to that would be, so you want us to sell Arne Engels for, say, 15, 17 million, and then that just to go into the same bank account that we seem to have lost the PIN number for? Absolutely no way. It'd be insanity. If you were willing us to let go a guy who has got a really high ceiling for development, he's not a finished article. He's 22 years old. He's not the player that he's the player that he's ever going to be. He's going to get better, and he would get better if he was playing around motivated, hungry players who want to play for Celtic.
This season's been completely destabilised, JP. It's like trying to judge somebody during the COVID season. It's very difficult to judge them during that season. And I think last season, when you look at what Engels did after coming to Celtic, becoming a full international, playing in the Champions League, scoring in the Champions League, man of the match appearances against Villa, etc. And, I would have just felt if this happened, it was far too soon. It was premature. It would show a sense of panic among Celtic in terms of we don't believe in what we actually signed up for when we brought Engels to the club. I also like the way that he has played under Martin O'Neill. I think there's more to come between now and the end of the season. Engels could be one of our most important players. See, when you think about who we've just signed and you think about the set pieces that Engels invariably takes, particularly the amount of corners we get in a game is incredible. And if we just had a big target man in the middle, that could be huge. That could be huge between now and the end of the season. But also, if you want to maximise the investment, now's not the time to sell Arne Engels.
No.
Get back into the Champions League. Get the boy back on the biggest platform.
Absolutely. On the flip side of that, that would be probably the argument that a sensible agent and representative of the club, be it the manager or whoever, would be saying to him, right, our aim is to win this league. It's a tall order at this moment in time. Of course it is. But our aim is to win this league, get back into the Champions League. You play another season in the Champions League. We aim for the 10 games again next season, like we should have been aiming for this season if we'd actually backed ourselves. And I saw Kairat got beat 4-1 at home off Bruges the other night, and they're now bottom of the group with 1 point, minus 14 goals. People will say, "Oh well, that shows we should have beaten them. We should have beaten them if we'd actually signed players to play in those games that we knew about and not leave our business until the last minute, as we're doing again this window."
Was there a standoff, JP, between the club saying to Brendan Rodgers, "You're not signing a new deal, so we're not going to back you"? Was there a standoff? I mean, it looks like that.
That's self-sabotage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's absolutely self-sabotage. He would be perfectly within his rights, given the way that they have operated at such a. I mean, we've seen it exposed. You've said this week that the curtain has been ripped down. It's no longer a peek behind the curtain. The curtain doesn't exist. The curtain has been set on fire by the fire behind it. And I'm sorry, but I as a mere season ticket holder, lifelong fan of the club, if I'm as frustrated and annoyed and borderline raging at the way that the club is being run, then what would it be like to actually be in day-to-day meetings with these people and have to suffer their incompetence and hesitance and reluctance to be what we should be, you know. So if he turned around and said, I want, like, as he was repeatedly saying in the media, I'm going to be here for the 3 years. And it must have got so bad that even he had to go back on his own word. And people will point back to the first time, and I get that. There was a different scenario then as well, which we are not privy to, whereby he left and obviously in the middle of the night and suddenly was in a Leicester City suit. Didn't go down well with me at that time. It still was an uncomfortable moment in time. But he said he wanted to come back and make sure that it wasn't edited out of Celtic's history. And that's what he was on his way to doing until, if he did say, no, I can't work with you, I'll be away at the end, I'll see out this season, I'll be away at the end of the season. If they then go, oh, well, yeah, 5-10 no playing, you're not getting any money to buy players. Well, who's getting harmed in that situation? That's not one man's self. What was the line that was in the statement? One man's quest for self-preservation or something like that. That's them. That's them. That's them. I've lost my train of thought because I saw Kev's thing come up there. They're harming us as a club by not allowing him to spend the money on players to get us to the point in time where we're in a Champions League group campaign again.
No, this is the thing though, JP. If you go back to what you were saying there about Rodgers getting fitted up for the Leicester suit, Ange Postecoglou did the same with Spurs, right? So they're flirting behind our backs. And you think to yourself, right, that type of manager who has still got some gas left in the tank post-Celtic. Martin O'Neill doesn't. It's a completely different scenario. But that type of manager, whilst they're at the football club, you need to have your contingency plan in. You need to know that part of the next season or the season after that is that the manager will be taken away by a richer club in a richer league. And if you're not prepared for that, then hell mend you. Now, that, as you say, does not give you an excuse not to buy the players you need to give you the best chance to win your qualifier. And people going about Kairat, you know what? Any qualifier, JP, is a banana skin. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Any of them. And this has proved that. Should we have beat Kairat? Yes. Were we the best prepared we could have been? No.
But so we've lost games in a Europa League competition that is of a lesser standard than the Champions League, and we lost at home to Braga because we didn't spend properly. We didn't recruit properly in the summer. It wasn't about just the qualifiers. It was about whether or not we had enough in this group stage. And then you'll get some idiot, and I could name his name, but I'm not going to bother, by saying, oh, well, look what happened. We won in Feyenoord. This team were good enough to win in Feyenoord, so why weren't they good enough to win at home against Braga? Because we didn't recruit properly. We lucked out in that game that we caught them at a good time. The Braga game could have gone either way. Look, the sheer fact that the advert for the summer transfer window is that we recruited a striker after the window had closed, and only because there was a relationship there. Do you think Iheanacho didn't have offers to go to bigger and more expensive leagues than Celtic? Probably could have, in the same way that your man Callum Wilson from West Ham has been linked to Saudi and all the rest of it. That if there was money to be made elsewhere, I would argue that maybe the only reason we got Iheanacho is because of Brendan Rodgers. Yeah. And he's made that personal call to him and said, look, we'll give you the platform here to resurrect your career because it's gone off piste a bit. And then unfortunately, because of the demands that we've put on him, he's not been able to play because of his fitness and everything else, and hamstring pops. I would love to see him involved in some way tonight, even if it's off the bench, just to get him back involved and have him as an option off the bench on Sunday if we need it.
With regards to this approach whereby we don't know for sure that Brendan's going to be at the football club, therefore we're not going to go all in like we did the previous summer in that £26 million spree to buy 3 players. But if that's your thought process, that means you're not running a functional football department, because you should be able to bring players in regardless who's the manager. It doesn't really, it matters who the manager is, of course it does. But in terms of recruitment, if your recruitment works, JP, and you're bringing the correct players in for the football club, if the manager was to change, and we always need to be aware of that, because we've seen it with Brendan, we've seen it with Ange, that the manager might change midway through a season or at the end of the season. Therefore, the players that you bring in are for the club. They're not for the manager. They're for the football club, and they're going to give us a better opportunity of success in the forthcoming season, regardless of who the manager is. So that £26 million, whoever was saying to you that was what was a catastrophic transfer window, absolute nonsense. It was the opposite. It was the absolute opposite. And if we had done that in the summer of this season, we would have been in a different position right now, having a completely different conversation.
I bet you if we hadn't made say we'd recruited properly and we'd still got out to Kairat, which I think is highly unlikely, by the way. I honestly think if we brought in 2 or 3 players for those games, we would have had enough. It would have also rejuvenated the squad, which was in desperate need right now of rejuvenation. They're screaming out for new recruits. And we've managed to get to this point, and we've lost a cup final. We've recruited a new manager off the back of it, and then let him go. And we've managed to still somehow put together enough results to not be completely off the top of the league. Like, as in, it's not like we're 12 points behind or anything like that. We've also got a swinger's chance, if you want to call it that, of getting into the next round of the Europa League. And guess who's in charge of the club? The same guy that was the last guy that won a knockout tie in Europe with the original version of that strip.
What a season you're having, by the way, JP. By the way, I think that's a very good point that Minan Fanoun makes here. You're telling me Liverpool didn't know Klopp was going into his last season, but they backed him to make sure that the next boss won the league, which he did. You're strengthening the club. You know, you're not strengthening somebody's ego. You're strengthening.
Martin O'Neill didn't kick out Henrik Larsson when he arrived, didn't he? He didn't go, oh, well, somebody else signed this guy. I'm not interested in him. Martin O'Neill was like, well, I've got this great player that I want to make better, and he did.
Yeah, but I'm going to go right back to that point. 2000, Martin O'Neill takes over the football club, and at that stage, JP, I've not even checked this yet, but I believe we had only spent £5 million or more on players on 2 occasions when Martin O'Neill took over the first time, and it was Rafael Scheidt and Eyal Berkovic. And Martin O'Neill obviously took one look at them and thought, absolutely no chance. These guys are not going to be playing for my Celtic team.
I can do everything you can. That's what he said to Rafael Scheidt.
I know. Rafael played for Martin O'Neill. There are competitive games of football that he actually played. And if you look at the 6-2 game, this is bizarre. Berkovic is on the bench in the 6-2 game. You just, history kind of almost airbrushes these guys out of the story. But at that point, it was an unusual thing for us to be spending that kind of money. It was normalised in the first couple of seasons under Martin O'Neill, because in the first couple of seasons, we did show that ambition of signing guys like Chris Sutton. Neil Lennon was an expensive acquisition, as was Alan Thompson. A wee bit less was just Valharan, and then you move into the realms of John Hartson the following season, etc. But then we didn't spend a lot of money for a long time on individual players. We go in and we sign Julien for 7, we sign Edouard for 9, we then have the Barkas and Ayeti 5 and 5, absolute flops. But when you look at what we've done this season, and we look at the £5 million on Trinecki, and by the way, regardless of the opposition, I was delighted that he got his goal. I was delighted that there seems to be some kind of a connection between him and Mark Fotheringham on the sidelines, and then it's followed up with him getting the media duties. So it feels as though Trinecki might be coming into a game here, and I hope he is. But the other big money buy in the summer was Michel-Ange Ballack.
Oh, yeah. I knew you were going there.
I'm starting to wonder 2 things. Firstly, potentially, I think there's a discussion point to suggest that he's the worst, value for money, pound for pound, the worst signing we've ever made. I think he's worse than Ayeti in terms of value, worth him back. But these guys at least were playing. I mean, Ballack just played against Auchinleck Talbot, and he didn't look as though he was above that level.
No.
He was dreadful. I know, by the way, Celtic did not play well. But my point is that affecting our spend in this window because we spent that money in summer? Yes, it is. So there's a knock-on effect to the bad window, JP, in that we're being very cautious in how we actually recruit for a couple of reasons. We've spent bad money in the summer, and we don't know who the manager's going to be next season. But that shouldn't, as the poster came in and used Klopp as an example, that should not stop us from going out. If we want Kieran Bowie, and it's not a short-term signing, and we want that player, what's the outlay? Can we throw a player in to make that happen as well? Well, we know Hibs wanted Luke McEwen, last summer. We knew just 18 months ago they wanted Luke McCowan. Can we make the deal happen? Then go and make it happen. Maswinisi is another guy that continually is mentioned, and rightly so. He's a player who could adapt very quickly into Celtic, particularly knowing the Scottish game, JP, right? £3 million. What is that? Seriously, we spent 5.2 in Balikwisha. £3 million is not a lot of money for a team like Celtic. Is there a player Motherwell are interested in? Yes, we know there is. Stephen Welsh. Throw him into the mix. Bring the player in. I don't see why there should be an issue at this level, JP. We're spending, let's say, £5 or £6 million on those two guys and moving a couple of guys. There's no way I'd spend £6 million on Kieran Bowie. No chance. I wouldn't. But £4 million, probably under the circumstances, I would. And as a football club, we need to make that happen if that's what Martin O'Neill wants to happen.
Well, I mean, there's absolutely no way that Martin O'Neill was at Fir Park to, taste their pies or see what their bovril was like. Do you know what I mean? There was, and we're not playing them we only just played them in December, so surely they're not on our fixture list for a wee while yet. I couldn't tell you exactly when it is, but it's not next week, put it that way. And you would think that was in order to see if the player passes the eye test, which is something that you wonder if we did do with Balikwisha and Tenekte, whoever else we've been looking at. Did we actually watch them in person? Because it's always a key thing. I mean, I watched Balikwisha in person on Sunday and came away thinking exactly what you said. I think in the post-match, he's not going to be a Celtic player. He's not, admittedly, I did say the same thing about Yang quite a long time ago, and Yang has actually proved that he can do the business in a Celtic shirt. Scored against Rangers. Yes, it will be forgotten, but he still did it. He scored in Europe against Feyenoord. Both of those things I thought were unthinkable about 6 months ago for Yang, when I was saying I cannot believe that we are now in a position where we're starting Yang, and that is just something that we're accepting as like, oh well, that's where we're at. We've gone from Jota and Abada to Yang. And then I
think Yang could be a useful backup between now and the end of the season. I think that goal against Rangers, unbelievable, incredible movement, incredible. He kind of slalomed his way through. He never took on 7 players, but there were 7 players in front of him, JP, and he managed to find a space. And people are going on about Butland should do better. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic performance defensively as well by Yang. Can we do better? Yes, we can. And then Yang's your backup, and you can rely on him for the last 20 minutes of games.
Yeah, I think the Balikwisha thing is, there was rumours that he would asked away, almost straight away.
Early doors. Yeah.
Whether or not he's not settled, I have no idea. But he's definitely not settled on the park. Whether there's issues off the park or not. My main argument when it came to that player was, I was sort of thinking, well, he got a pretty decent send off from his previous club, and I always
maybe they were delighted to see him go.
Well, there is that train of thought that you could jump to, but right now it just looks like a very, very muddled signing, because we signed 2 players in exactly the same position, because Maeda had cleared out his locker and was, 1 foot out the door to Germany. And then all of a sudden we signed 2 guys seemingly in the same position, although Balikwisha is allegedly a number 10. But I'm sorry, I saw him operate in that position on Sunday, and he didn't. You would think. And I know that it was in like a grim ground, and it was against a lower league team, and he may have been thinking to himself, "Is this where it's at for me? I'm in the B team, basically." That's essentially what was rolled out. Bar Callum McGregor, really, it was the kind of right. Let's see, but surely you would have been like, "I'll take that as an opportunity to show these fans that I'm not a dud, that I have got it in me to take a game by the scruff of the neck and spray balls about, and be the number 10 that he's allegedly is." And I just didn't see anything like that from him. And I was right down the front on the halfway line, so you're up close and you were seeing the sort of the movement of the player up close. It's not often that get that opportunity, and I just didn't get a good feeling from.
That should have been his dress rehearsal for tonight. He should have been showing Martin O'Neill that he was deserving of a jersey for tonight, Balaquisha.
Yeah, and what, playing instead of Rio Hatate or something like that? Because in much the same way as like I would sort of balked at the idea of Engels leaving. If a story came up this afternoon that linked Rio Hatate with a move to another club, I'd be like, right, okay, it's probably time, as long as we've got an adequate replacement lined up. And I would have more faith in us having an adequate replacement lined up under this current manager and coaching team. Whether it's Mark Fotheringham making phone calls to Germany, or I don't know, like I think I said before, I just like trust these guys a bit more because they have a passion for Celtic. You know, they're not going to put their names to somebody that they don't think is going to come in and make a material impact in the team. And I think Rio Hatate's race is run at Celtic, and I've thought that for quite some time. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt at the start of this season, thinking, right, he's got a World Cup to play for and all the rest of it, but he's just not shown it.
Not this season. Not this season. What you're saying there as well, I just think that O'Neill, Maloney, Fotheringham, and let's not forget McManus.
Yeah,
they are operating with absolutely no margin for error. No margin for error, JP. So even when you're thinking about bringing players in, like you say, everything's with a fine tooth comb. You know, they're absolutely scrutinising
late nights in a dark office in Lennoxtown, chewing the fat over this player or that player or this player or that player. I can imagine that happening. I don't imagine these guys just being like, that's 5 o'clock, I'm away, see you. I can imagine them being like, right, I'll be here till 11, 12 o'clock. And much the same way as there's absolutely no way Nicholson and Mackay should be anywhere near that plane yesterday. And I'm not seeing any footage of whether they're there or not, but there's absolutely no business need for them to be there. Every single minute of their time right now should be concentrated on getting deals done. And it would be a horrendous look for them. And not giving themselves a lack of horrendous looks this season in terms of Tannadice and the optics of the phone, chucking the scarf away at Celtic Park and all the rest of it. Like it was a bit of, like, you know...
He should have put it round his neck. That's what he should have done. He should have put it round his neck. And I didn't mean in a bad way. I mean, I'm a Celtic fan just like you guys. They've never made an opportunity. They've never taken an opportunity to turn the optics round. When that scarf was thrown at him, right, and that's out of frustration, he should have just put it on. He should have put it on. Because what he did, like you say, he discarded it, JP, as if nothing to me. Are you a Celtic fan? I would have just put it right round my neck, absolutely. But see, I mentioned this yesterday about getting on that plane. That would be the worst look ever. Don't think for a moment, because we've just announced Spanchara, that you can jump on there for a jolly, because that's all it's going to be for you. What you've just said there, the info I'm getting is that these guys are working round the clock. I'm talking O'Neill, Maloney, Fotheringham, round the clock, JP.
Does not surprise me.
Because
I would be. You would be. See, if we were there doing that job, we would be putting every minute of our time into it. Every minute of our time. There would be nothing else that would be occupying my time. Everything would be concentrated on what I can do to make Celtic better for the rest of this season. And we've only got a short window to do it. And it might be the difficult January transfer window, quote unquote, but we're in it and we've got the ability to do something about it right now. There's no point in crying into your cornflakes on the 2nd of February when you're like, oh, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Should be doing it now.
No, without a doubt. And I mentioned it yesterday, and a few people came and goes, oh, come on. You know, they're entitled to go to the game. No, they're not. They
absolutely, no way.
Celtic Park, working on deals. You know, you've got one overline. What's the next one? Let's move on to the next one. Because see if you run out of time and you don't get a deal done last minute and it costs us, because this is going to the wire. This is Love Street revisited 40 years later. This is probably going to be won by a point or goal difference, this league, JP. And we need every single possible
and we've seen our main
positive addition we can get.
We've seen our main rivals in Hearts lose key players for a significant amount of time, and they can scramble around and try and bring in their Jamestown analytics picks for this month, but there's still a settling in period and everything else that has to be attributed to that. And with the greatest of respect, I don't think they're going to be able to get anybody that knows the league as well as the players that they've lost out on. So we're in a prime opportunity here to be able to take advantage of the money that we have that we've not taken advantage of in the summer last year, and be able to exert a bit of that financial muscle to be able to say, right, well, we can go out and buy this guy who's going to make a significant difference to our team. And if they point to it at the end of the season, well, you only win the league because you spent money in January, like, well, aye. Sorry about that. Like,
you know what though? I said this other day, right? See, in the past when we're trying to sell this football club to someone who's got no connection to Celtic, JP, normally we use the old, we're playing in front of a full house every second week, 60,000 fans, world-renowned club, Champions League football, big games under the lights. People talk about the Glasgow Derby, etc., etc. We can't sell any of that right now. All we can use to our advantage is the money that's sitting in the bank. So go and use it. We can't entice anybody with anything other than money right now, JP. Mm-hmm. We really can't sell the dream right now in January because we're sitting in the mid. We're nearer the bottom third of a Europa League group. We're sitting second in the table, and we're on to our third manager who's done the job twice this season. It's not an enticing sell as it normally is. All we have at the moment is the money. Therefore, you've got to use it. You put yourself in this situation, you're going to have to buy yourself out of it. Not ordinarily, I would think that was completely bad practice, and I would warn against it. But it's the only option we've got at the moment, JP.
Absolutely, and like I said, you get to the end of the season, there could be all this sort of the kind of hand wringing and everything else. Oh well, you only won the league because Shanklin got injured for 8 weeks in January, and Cammy Devlin got injured for 8 weeks in January, and Benny Benimgray was suspended. They've enjoyed a run of really, really good fortune and lack of injuries.
Yeah,
I did actually listen to a Hearts podcast for the first time ever this week, I was just curious to know because the smugness level of them has been completely off the scale. In particular, one person that I know on Twitter that I've kept the receipts, believe me. I really hope I can cash them in.
What do they call Jambo podcasts? I mean, what are they called?
I'm not going to reveal the one that I listened to because it would maybe inflate.
Give them far too much delight. Absolutely.
But what I will say is that they did acknowledge that we have had injuries, that we have been unfortunate in injuries, and it's almost a case of like, well, this is our turn to show how we can cope as a squad without 3 or 4 of our main first team regulars. Because let's face it, we've not had Jota. Can you imagine this season with Jota? Like even Jota
and a fit CCV and a fit AJ. I mean, dearie me, that's before you take in, Iheanacho, Sriracha, etc.
Aye, I was going to say if we'd had Iheanacho like starting every week, I would have fancied him to have definitely scored at least half the chances that Johnny Kenny's had.
I listed them the other day, by the way. I couldn't believe there was 4 against Aberdeen. JP, 4 chances he had against Aberdeen. Johnny Kenny should have scored a hat-trick against Auchinleck. Talbot should score against Rangers.
It's not fair on the guy. It's not fair on the guy to put all that pressure on him. Like people, if anyone like goes in hard on him, it's like, well, the guy's played in. He's a League of Ireland striker that's suddenly become the first team pick for Celtic. Like, I believe in fairy tales, but this is a fairy tale that's currently not working, or not. That doesn't have the happy ending that sees Johnny Kenny lift the league title. Because we're not scoring. Johnny Kenny's not scoring enough goals for us to lift the league title right now. So you have to leave it to those that are willing and get somebody else in that can. And that's what we've done by announcing your man half an hour ago. And that's the guy that is going to start. I mean, I would like to think that we could bring in another striker of some level just to have his backup. Because what if that guy's hamstring pops in the first week in February? I obviously don't want that to happen, but the way
that's why you need a backup. That's why you need a backup, absolutely. And it doesn't say much for the recruitment again in summer that Shin Yamada's part of that discussion because the guy's like a ghost.
I would be, if I was his agent, I'd be working the same hours as Stephen McManus and Fotheringham O'Neill, and I would be doing the same amount of work to try and get him out of Celtic as I would as the Celtic coaching team to get players in, because
without a doubt,
there's absolutely no point in him being at Celtic.
Empty jersey. The fact that Rodgers didn't even put him in a Europa League squad was the biggest
red flag ever.
Didn't he want him? Didn't he want him? Wasn't he his boy? Wasn't he his signing? And we're getting told in meetings by the CEO, he rubber stamps every sign. Just getting lied right to our faces, lied to by the CEO.
Yes.
Ah, yeah. Paul Carty says no need for the board to be in Bologna. How much of their personal money have they used in being there? Total freeloaders, could and should be working on deals. Hope fans give them it tight. I genuinely hope they're not there. Terence Boyle, our club is broken from the inside. DD, step up or go. And we also have Hail Paradise 88 agreed the striker is a start, but we should have brought in at least 4 players just now. We have brought in 2 officially so far. Thank you for supporting the channel. Kevin O'Donnell, love the show, guys. Listening, munching on an old Baker's steak and haggis pie.
That sounds brilliant.
3 points tonight. That does sound good. If you want a free pie, come along to Bad tonight. We're doing the Fan Zone Bara's Art and Design, and we will be on the stage. Tony Haggerty's going to be joining us. We've got some live music from Dirty Old Town, and as I say, free pie is always worth a free pie, JP. Listen, that's us an hour in. You did say something that, it bade. It bade well. I don't even know what the past tense of bode well would be. I'm thinking of Bodo Glimt. Anyway, you did say something that gave us a bit of positivity one European night. Was it Feyenoord, where we didn't expect to get a result? And we did. I think you said
you asked me at the end of the show if I thought we were going to win, and for some bizarre reason, I had a good feeling about that night. I don't know why. There was no real reason to feel that way, but I just had the feeling that night that we would. I don't have the same feeling tonight just because of the sheer turmoil that we've gone through and the trauma that, like you say, that has impacted on the squad in terms of players playing out of position, losing their rhythm and everything else. But I mean, maybe we could sneak a draw, and what a result that would be. That I said going into the Midtjylland game that a draw would have been an absolute, that would have been a great result for us. And lo and behold, we got absolutely bodied in that game. But the way that the way that you look at Bologna and their form and everything else, they're not putting the fear of God into me, like maybe Midtjylland did. Midtjylland were sitting top of the whole Europa League group at that point when we played them. They might not be top now, but they're not far off it. I think they're the joint second or third or something like that. Bologna have had a pretty indifferent domestic campaign so far. Something like 1 in 10 wins in the last 10. Is that somewhere along those lines? They're not that far ahead of us in the Europa League. In the Europa League group stage, so it's just the fact that we haven't won an Italian. We've won once on Italian soil, so you would be a little bit you'd be a little bit wayward to be suggesting that we're going to just waltz over to Bologna tonight and pick up 3 points and trot back to Glasgow. But stranger things have happened, and just because we've only won once doesn't mean to say we'll never win again. And I would argue that Bologna are a far less side than Lazio.
Give us a draw, and I'll be happy tonight. Don't believe the hype is the tagline, and it takes a boardroom of half a dozen to hold us back, it would seem, JP, and that is where we are right now. Let's hope that Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay are not on that plane to Bologna unless they're going over to sign a player. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and join us 30 minutes before kickoff this evening on a Celtic State of Mind.